Most of us are familiar with the horrible tales of vicious sociopath Ted Bundy. We have read the articles, watched the news, and heard the stories surrounding the maniac. This film is a chance to get close and personal with one of the most deranged human beings to ever live. Director Matthew Bright will leave a slight chill in your soul for days after screening this 2002 biopic starring Michael Riley Burke as the sadistic serial killer. The film opens with a maniacal bathroom mirror exchange between Bundy and himself, and within 10 minutes after that, we are pulled into his bow tie wearing, obsessive compulsive, heavy drinking, kleptomaniacal, publicly masturbating world of terror that never lets go. Bright moves us from scene to scene with non-stop horror that always has a sense of reality, as he never forgets how charming and comedic the real-life Bundy was. He has a really good actor to work with in Michael Riley Burke, and they both put together a unique piece of work that will leave you wondering just how many Ted Bundys could be out there. The music is a bit weak at times, and some of the supporting cast really can't act, but overall, Matthew Bright does a very nice job at delivering a slick, independent feature here with a lead actor that gets deep into the mind of one truly disturbing dude. Tom Savini, Tracy Walter, and Bodie Bliss co-star in this unforgettable, surrealistic, nightmarish vision of Ted Bundy, serial killer. All right, Matthew Bright, Ted Bundy, Michael Riley Burke, all this stuff mixed together in this one, guys. Max, what do you think?
Well, I gotta tell you, I'd seen this film a long time ago, and then when you assigned me to see it again, I had the weirdest reaction, and this may be unusual, and this may be out of character, but I saw so many attractive babes in this movie, in hot little panties, and hot little bikinis,
Yes.
and I started to get a boner, and then the next scene, Ted Bundy's beating him with a pipe,
Yeah.
and I thought that was really sick, and I felt like a sick, seedy fuck for having a boner. And I'm like, this isn't fair, because I know that this is one of those things where, there were real victims. They had names. They had families.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't be getting a boner, and I shouldn't be titillated by these girls.
Right.
And then in the next moment, Bundy's beating them. And I felt really dirty, and I felt like this is kind of crazy, and it felt so much less respectful to the true victims of his murders than the Dahmer film did. And as much as I thought Michael Riley Burke was pretty fucking outrageous,
Yes.
it felt a little cartoony and a
Yeah.
little
Well, that's the interesting thing I think about this movie is that it's really kind of like a caricature of Bundy, where to me the movie's like if you were to fall asleep and have a nightmare about who Ted Bundy was, this is what would play out in your mind. This movie.
Yeah, I mean, the director Bright, he has this sensibility where he tries to stylize his violence, and it just comes at odds. And I think it goes back to the same discussion we were having, and for good reason, obviously, about fictionalizing serial killers or filming real life serial killers. Stylizing killing is something that is, diametrically opposed to filming a real life serial killer, and it's problematic,
Yeah, Billy.
I agree. I was actually going to ask you, Tom, what your feeling was for the caricaturish quality of it, because it does play like a comic book.
Absolutely, it's like a cartoon. Like I said, man, it's like a dream, and none of the victims they don't use any of the real names. Even he takes so many liberties at the true story. He had different colors, like even the car. The car was not the Volkswagen that he's so famous for picking up his victims in was not the actual color of the car. And I have to wonder if Bright was just trying to just create this surrealistic piece that just played like a nightmare.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, the guy's great at doing these stylized killing, exploitation killing movies. I mean, Freeway and Freeway 2 are just, vacuous fun,
Yeah.
I mean,
I
they're
like
just,
Freeway. Yeah.
yeah, like they're just a lot of fun, but you can't graft that onto Ted Bundy's story. And, I think that he sensed that because this doesn't go as far as his other films do. It doesn't go. He can't help making it stylized because that's who he is. That's him as an artist, and you can't fault him for that. But you can fault him for taking this project because you do it with a real life serial killer. People are going in there, and it's not fun when Ted Bundy is killing 30 women. You know what I mean? Innocent women, and it's just it's not fun. You know what I mean?
No, not at all. And how difficult. Is it for Burke to do some of those scenes? I mean, seriously. I mean, I'm watching this movie and I'm like, how does this guy just not feel despicable? Once the camera stops rolling. I mean, it's just such a disgusting character to get into.
I would like to just comment a bit on what you guys were just talking about, the stylizing versus a more factual approach to it. I think that the best attempts to dramatize real life serial killers veer wildly away from reality. So, for instance, Ed Gein in Psycho, Ed Gein in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Ed Gein in Silence of the Lambs. All of those veer wildly and they're highly stylized, but there's also purpose. I mean, even Texas Chainsaw Massacre has a purpose to, scare the bloody hell out of you, and it works really well. This one, he takes the real story and he veers off and he stylizes it, but to what end? I just feel like it's titillation. I mean, there are gorgeous women in that movie from start to finish.
I hear you, Bill.
Just having the living hell beat out of them, and I'm just like,
it seems that at some point.
Max's story sums it up perfectly. You get a boner and then feel guilty about it. It's like, well, is that your purpose?
Yeah.
Is like
he does that too, Bright. He goes from scene to scene to scene to scene to scene. Like there's one point where it just seems like there are 5 or 6 scenes in a row where it's just him, doing what he does. But I think also, I mean, it's what Bundy does. It's how Bundy operated. I mean, the fake arm, the fake cast that he wore on his arm, and pretending he was a police officer. I mean, all these are all the things that he would do to manipulate these women, and how I mean, I just can't imagine, in this world today. I mean, this, he did this in the 70s. I mean, would women today fall that, victim easily, to someone trying to do that to him?
Well, he was a handsome fellow.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, I mean, and Bright, he offers that to you. He shows he never stops making him, a charming character. He's constantly charming. Throughout the film, except for when he's doing those maniacal acts to his victims. He's always charming and funny. Yeah, well, he's a funny, it's, I hate to laugh at some of the scenes, but he picked up a hitchhiker and I couldn't help but laugh when he's just like, hey, what the hell is that over there? And the girl looks and he hits her.
It's hilarious.
It's funny. Yeah. And even though hey, could you help me with the sailboat? I mean, that stuff is. I've always been fascinated with Ted Bundy, and I know a lot of people are going to think that I'm crazy for saying that. I've always found him kind of funny.
Here's the thing, man. If you change the guy's name in the movie, here's the crux of it. You change the guy's name in the movie, Matthew Bright is free to make the film funny.
Absolutely.
Huh.
But if you keep his name, there's a problem. You know what I mean? And I think it's exactly what we were talking.
Well, you're describing natural born killers.
Yeah.
Well, Matthew Bryce,
which is over the top and crazy.
Yeah, Matthew Bryce describing natural born killers. I mean, we're talking about Ed Gein before, or Gein, whatever the hell you call him. I mean, in Psycho, the guy wasn't he wasn't named Matthew or Ed Gein. He was Norman Bates. So he had latitude to change that. To change the script and make it his own, and Matthew Bright is not allowed that here because of Ted Bundy. So he's he's at the.
You're saying that he cannot make a film using the name Ted Bundy. You're saying that he can't do something different like he did in this movie. Like that what are you saying? That it doesn't work, or
He can do it, but yeah, it doesn't work. It works in Freeway. You know what I mean? I mean that is a really good movie. You know, and it's because it's not based on. It's because of the same thing that Max was saying. You know, you don't feel guilty for feeling turned on by that girl.
Yeah, but what I think that Bright is doing is instead of trying to pretend that as a director of the film that he knows exactly what went through Bundy's mind or through the victim's mind and through all the bullshit that went on with this guy, where he's just creating, just like I said, a nightmarish vision of it. You know, because who are we to say that?
Listen, man, the guy's frolicking through the woods with cheery music, chasing after these bloody naked women. I mean, okay.
Yeah, my main problem was that Matthew Bright makes it look like fun to be Ted Bundy. I mean, look how much fun you have. But hold on.
Ted Bundy was having fun with it.
He's so excited about this. Listen to him. What is your adrenaline level at right now, Tom? You gotta
like Bundy levels. I'm pretty sure.
Take a sip of the
Bundy level.
Take a sip of Max's Prosecco.
All right, Bill. Go ahead, Billy.
No, you're very excited, and I guess I sort of want to shortcut and say, what is it that you love so much about this film?
Like I said, from what I know about Ted Bundy, I think that Bundy himself found, comedy in his sickness and charm in his sickness. And I think that Bright does an excellent job at bringing that to the screen, and he never lets go of it.
You feel like the movie is like being inside of Ted Bundy's mind for an hour and a half. Like that
the movie is like what, not exactly in inside of his mind, but what I, in my own mind, might think of, of who he is, because it's impossible to really make a movie where you're actually inside in any biopic.
But
and it's about a serial killer. I mean, it's just like we discussed earlier. It's a difficult thing. Nobody's done a great biopic of a serial killer that's been taken seriously.
Because how can you put something on the screen where you empathize with someone you can't understand? That's exactly it. You can't
in the same. Yeah, sorry. Go
on. Ahead, man. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking that I think we do. I think they're called action movies, and they star Bruce Willis and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone, and we cheer because those guys are given a cheap moral license to murder as many people as they want.
Yeah.
Because they're the good guy, But I think it's the same impulse that leads you to cheer for a serial killer.
Yeah, and the only solution in the script level for making a biopic movie about a serial killer is siding us with an investigator who can understand what's wrong with this guy. Right. You know what I mean? So
that's what they do in the Deliberate Stranger with Mark Harmon.
They do it in everything. Yeah. They do it every decent serial killer movie is about the investigator or the journalist or whatever.
Huh.
Even probably, it's not a serial killer movie, but it is a murder movie. Probably the strangest one I've seen in years is Werner Herzog's My Son, What Have You Done? You guys seen that?
I haven't seen that yet. I will.
Yeah. But it goes back all the way to...
Even in Werner Herzog's Strange World, he still has at least half the movie devoted to the investigators outside on the street.
We happen to have Werner Herzog here. Werner? How did you go about filming
he stepped out for a cigarette.
We're going to get you to do that eventually, Billy.
Billy does for everybody out there in Harland, Billy does an amazing Werner Herzog talking to David Lynch routine.
You get Max and me in one room, and there's about 20 or 30 people in there.
But no, it's been the same movie since Fritz Lang's M.
I was just going to bring that up, and M is incidentally based on a real case.
Yeah, and it's based, and we follow the investigation, not the. Although,
But the other thing that Fritz Lang does that's brilliant, and it's sort of set the template for films like Zodiac, is that he measures the social ramifications, the way people behave around it, which has roots in things like Frankenstein as well. You know, how does the village respond to the murderer?
Right.
And that's
because
sort
that's
of the
all you,
easiest
because that's
to
the
do.
only thing you could do, man. Because you can't.
Well, because it's what we're doing in the audience. We are.
Yeah, because exactly. And you know what? It's the best way to put terror on the screen is to have people running about mindlessly and screaming, or locking their doors. I mean, that's the way to show how it's horrifying, And
I think you sort of hit the nerve of my categorical indifference to serial killer films is that they're real people. And I'm already an audience member, and there's already a cast of investigators, the police, and there's already websites devoted to it. I am already a participant as an audience member in this person who's put themselves on a stage. So why do I want that at a third remove?
Yeah, exactly, man. I mean, like I was saying with in my introduction to Dahmer, is that it precedes you. Everything precedes the film. You know what I mean? So, what is the film going to bring to us?
And for that, yeah.
And that's exactly why it's so hard. I mean, you can't. It's hard to fault the directors except for agreeing to take the project. I mean, they're doing. I mean, they're doing a serviceable job and an admirable job in what they're doing. And Matthew Bright has a clear vision and a clear voice.
He's a good director.
Yeah. It's just
my criticism of this film.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm new to him. I had never seen the Freeway movies before, and I mean, as a stylist, he's got muscle, real muscle.
I agree with you, Billy. I mean, I think that's when I first saw Ted Bundy, and then I made the connection that he did Freeway, which I saw a few years before I initially watched Ted Bundy. I think the reason why I was impressed with Bundy is that I saw a style there that I was really drawn to, and that's what makes this film a little bit more impressive than it probably should be, to me.
Max, are you a fan of the Freeway film or films? Have you seen any of those?
I haven't, but I'm so going to see them now. And I was just, as I was watching Ted Bundy, I'm like, really? Did Ted Bundy stand outside in the bushes beating off so hard to his meat? And like in a Tex Avery cartoon, the guy up above goes, "You again?" And he pours a pitcher of water on his head.
It's cartoonish.
To douse his sexuality. I'm like, what the fuck am I watching here? No doubt it's exciting filmmaking, but call the movie Ted Crazy Pants. Don't call it Ted Bundy.
What about when he was at that party and there was that news announcement about a serial killer in the area?
Oh, yeah.
and he goes, "Don't look at me. I didn't do it." and then somebody goes, "Do you think any of those girls are still alive?" And he goes, "No, they're way dead."
The caveat is Bright puts in actual Ted Bundy footage at the end.
Yeah.
And that just felt kind of like a fist up my ass because I've been watching a whole different cartoon and then I'm pulled into this reality that this was the guy.
Yeah, why did he do that?
Well, he opens with
a couple of photos.
Yeah.
And then
so I had to cleanse my palate with actual Bundy footage, which is very unsettling because in the end, Ted had one final interview and he had one final message.
Yeah.
And he talked to some stiff.
Yeah.
And he says, "I blame pornography." Which is preposterous.
That's suspect though because he was a manipulative cat, right? And he was talking to a Christian. He was talking for a journalist from the Christian Science Monitor, I believe it was. So he was trying to get him riled up. Who knows what he was.
He's gonna get his kicks by fucking anyone.
That was the day before he was executed, and he's still playing games.
Yeah, and he was Bright shows the scene where he's on the phone saying, "I can help you solve these murders," and
he's right about that. I mean, listen. I mean, do you think? All right, let's talk about this. Do you guys think that someone like Bundy or anyone like Bundy should be executed, or should they be left alive for study? I mean, seriously.
Oh man, see, we're
just jump right into the deep end of the political.
Yeah,
pools.
No, I mean just make it quick. You don't like. Honestly, I mean.
So you're saying, do we believe in capital punishment? I think it's only right to defer to our guest.
Yeah, the gun owner.
I don't own a gun. I want to. My wife doesn't want me to have one because she thinks
good for your wife.
Kill myself.
Good for
What's that?
I say good for your wife.
Oh, Thomas, I love this side of you. I don't know. I mean, gosh, I think we have a lot to learn from a Bundy and a Dahmer. And
you too.
In that instance, in that degree of mental madness and darkness, I think there's something to probe there. But if a guy just, I don't know,
look,
randomly
this isn't a political
family,
show.
Or how about the guy that we just saw in the news who killed his wife, buried her, and then killed the two kids, blew them up. Well, if he survived that, which he wouldn't have, it's all subjective. It's very frustrating.
Yeah.
Since this is a podcast about movies and not politics, I have a slightly easier question, but still something. Max, do you think that a film like Ted Bundy has a moral imperative not to glorify its subject matter?
Not Ted Bundy. Dahmer, yes. Ted Bundy, no. I thought Ted Bundy was really seedy, and it made me uncomfortable, and I didn't like seeing all those women die. It felt like a party, and I just was really upset by it, actually. I was like, this is not, and I love horror, and I love serial killer films, but this just felt like, yeah, man, this guy's a party, let's kill some chicks, and I mean, they literally were playing fun time songs while he's lying in the woods with corpses. I didn't see the irony. I didn't see the joy.
But to Bundy, it is fun.
Really cynical.
But what Bright's doing is he's explaining to the viewer that to Bundy that was fun.
That's a fine line, man. I mean,
It's a way fine line. I'm not that smart.
Yeah, I don't know, Tom. I think it's a little bit of exploitative in this setting.
Tom, I'm convinced that you were one of the people writing Ted Bundy love letters when he was in prison.
I think Tom was actually
what are you attacking me for all night, man?
I'm teasing. Oh, the master of sarcasm.
Listen, Bill. Bill's really. This is what Bill does to me for the best. He ignores every single text that I send him, and he comes on tonight's podcast, and he completely insults me from beginning to end.
I was saving it all up.
Yeah.
He's plotting his revenge, is what he's doing.
Oh man! Hey,
listen, man. The thing is, and this is just my opinion, man. It works so well in the Freeway movies, man. I mean, it is so fun when Reese Witherspoon shoots that fucker in the face, and when she's slamming her parole officer into the wall and all this blood. I mean, it's a lot of fun because it's ridiculous. You know it's ridiculous. The problem with Ted Bundy is that it's Ted Bundy, man. This is a freaking guy. It's a guy who existed, who did this to people. It's reprehensible.
You know, it's funny. Rob Lowe, Kiefer Sutherland, and Peter Sarsgaard all passed on this project. They felt that the material was just way out of hand. They didn't want anything to do with it.
Dude, all you had to do was change the guy's name, and that guy would have had a field day with this film.
Oh, it would have been the best black comedy ever.
It would have been that. It would have been like the serial killer, Natural Born Killers, or the Freeway or whatever. Yeah. And the problem is that they don't change the name because they want to cash in on the name.
Yep.
Yeah.
Huh.
Poor Tom. Tom, I'm hugging you right now.
I appreciate it, Billy. I kind of, you guys are all coming at me here. I can't take it.
No, Tom.
Tom, is that a tear you just shed on me?
Tom, you're awesome.
Over Ted Bundy. Yes.
No, that's it. Just tomahawk.
Okay, fair enough. Let's talk about some of the people that popped up in the film.
Eric Dare from Twin Peaks.
And someone who I think you'll appreciate, Max, Tracy Walter, who's Bob the Goon in Batman. Yeah.
Yes.
And
I have held Tracy in my arms. I've been on many auditions, and I saw Tracy, and I've talked to Tracy. And one day I went up to Tracy and said, "Do you mind if I give you a hug?" He goes, "I don't give a shit." And I hugged him, and I held him, and I smelled his head, and there was a vapor. It was very strong, and he doesn't smell very good, but he's a beaut.
And we have to mention the fact that Tom Savini popped up as a police officer. And what I
which took me completely out of the reality and just it was the nail in the hammer of the joke. I mean, I love Savini, but when that fucker shows up, it's a laugh fest.
Yeah,
I'm supposed to buy him as a hardcore homicide detective.
Yeah, exactly. It was like the cops in the Toxic Avenger. They all had like long hair and mustaches.
They look an awful lot like dope fiends, every one of them.
But it's funny because unfortunately, I think they had written a bigger role for him, and for one reason or the other, it didn't work out, and he was just reduced to that one scene. Savini, the chick that played his girlfriend, Bodhi,
she was pretty good.
Yeah, she was amazing. Oh, she was a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
What about
and the scene where she allows him inside her ass was crazy. She's just trying to give him what he wants. I really felt for her.
Because of that scene?
Yeah, because she allowed him in her ass. She didn't want that. She's like, "I know you want that, Ted. All right. I don't want to give you that." She
that was
well, there was
That's
something.
a brave actress.
I did listen to the commentary on this one, and her when they were doing it, and she was he asked her to play dead. I mean they put that in there because they had to veer away from not showing him making love to actual corpses because of rating.
Prohibitions on necrophilia in that movie. That's what is the line in Apocalypse Now? That's like handing out speeding tickets at the Indy 500.
Do any of you guys, did you notice this? That and it's true. He worked at a crisis center. Bundy actually.
Of course he did.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah, but it's true. I mean, it was
that
all
conversation.
Funny. It was a fucking comedy.
It was a comedy.
The guy who
Bundy. I mean,
it was Mr. Bundy's Penguins.
Oh boy.
Hey Max, what do you think about the performance of Michael Burke?
I actually thought he was pretty committed. I mean, I did think he was a little cartoony at times, but I actually thought he was very charismatic. And in the down scenes, I thought he handled those very well. It's just when he's beating off in the bushes and making the face.
There was a nice scene with him right at the beginning of the film. It's really the first time they really take a time out at the beginning of the movie. And he, after beating a woman and stealing her purse, he stops off at a phone booth and talks to his girlfriend.
Yeah, that was good.
And he kind of sees the blood on. He's feeling lonely and he wants to be with this woman, but as he's talking to her, he realizes that there's blood on his sleeve, and he kind of begins to push himself away from going over and seeing her. And I thought that was a very, very well done scene from the act.
Yeah, he was very strong. And my wife actually went to FSU and has kind of a connection to the whole Bundy time, and it's really interesting because she was really interested in seeing the film, so I showed her both the films. And the thing is, like, especially the scene in the bar when he's picking up on the two chicks much later in the film.
Yeah.
I mean, with the bow tie and the jacket and the earnestness, it's really eerie. Mm-hmm. It's like what the Bundy film could have been if Bright chose to really stick with, truthful facts like the Dahmer film did. You might have had something because he's a very gifted filmmaker. I don't deny that at all. But it felt like a Natural Born Killers with a monkey soundtrack or something. I mean,
Yeah, the music again, and that all to me plays into the fact that it's kind of like a dream of Ted Bundy because the music doesn't fit. Like it's supposed to be in the '70s, and there's this like techno pop music playing, and I'm not saying it's not Kraftwerk. It's real. It's something that would be released like in the '90s.
Kraftwerk.
It doesn't.
Kraftwerk.
Well, did we just bring up Kraftwerk?
Amazing.
I brought up.
You're having that dream, and I want to have that dream too. But asking, a mass audience or a DVD renting creep show audience to have that dream is a lot.
I hear what you're saying, Joe. I wanted to let Max and Billy know when Joe and I, we
oh boy,
we shared an apartment together in New Brunswick. When we were in our New Brunswick, New Jersey, when we were in our early 20s. And Joe, if I remember correctly, you wore bow ties around the Rutgers University.
Oh,
I did, and you know why I did that? I had lost my mind because Tom's snoring was so loud.
I wasn't snoring. I was 20 years old.
It drove me temporarily insane. I ran right out to the store to buy bow ties as a way to repel his snoring.
You couldn't even imagine what my poor girlfriend goes through with that, Joe.
I asked. I remember
an AM radio, listening to AM.
I went down there to visit Tom. We had, I met his girlfriend for the first time. We haven't been hanging out, in person for a while. And I said, Tom snores, right? She just looked at me with this knowing, like, yeah, he snores. Tom, I would be in the kitchen trying to sleep.
Oh my God! We had to share a bedroom, right? Because we had like 2 bedrooms, and we had another roommate who we weren't friends.
Yeah, it was called the snore room.
The snore room. You weren't friends with the other roommate? Why?
He was just someone we lost like 3 roommates or something due to circumstances, and we put an ad in the paper to look for a roommate, and we actually got this kid. He was an actor, right, Joe? I believe. Did you remember?
Yeah, I borrowed some of his bow ties.
It was. I guarantee you, it was the worst 6 months of this kid's life. I feel bad, because we were a little.
Listen. The costumes in Ted Bundy.
Okay.
I do have a note for that, man. Sure. I never noticed the costumes, man. And this goes right back to the cartoonish thing. I was really distracted by the costuming in this film. I never, ever, I don't think once ever before in my life, ever even thought about costuming outside of one of my own films, and even then it's just cursory consideration. For this film, it seemed like everybody was like at like a 70s theme party. Did you guys pick up on that, especially the girl?
Completely. Yeah.
It was definitely the serial killer version of that 70s show.
Oh, that's so true.
Right.
And you know what I really hated? I really hated at the end of the film, I'm Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
I'm Ted Bundy. I'm Ted Bundy. I'm Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
Fuck all of you. What are we doing here? Are we saying universally that we're all a Tex Avery cartoon that beats off in the bushes and beats?
But what's also weird about that, Max, is that's stolen right from Spike Lee's Malcolm X.
That's correct.
And I thought about that when I was watching it again. I'm like, why?
Wait, isn't that Spartacus?
That's a good point, man.
Yeah, there you go, Bill.
What year was Spike Lee's movie?
92.
And this came out in 2000.
Oh, wow, that's good. That's good reference there.
Yeah.
Tom's like an encyclopedia.
Yeah. Well, and I'm a big Alex Haley fan.
I didn't even get that reference.
Okay, does anybody else want to add anything into the mix of Ted Bundy before we get to ratings? Billy?
Just overall, I would ask if you guys even consider serial killer movies horror films at all.
I would.
Yeah, I agree with Joe. Yeah, it's totally horrifying.
I think I've been grappling with this for a while, and what makes a horror film a horror film. I think it's just part and parcel of being on this podcast, and I'm just trying to understand horror films, and I've kind of reduced it down to its simplest definition for me is just that if the film's main intent is to frighten you, then it should be deemed a horror film. And I think that serial killer films, at root, even though they take a different tact and inroad to the frightening, I think that at heart they're there to frighten you. That you are possible, that somebody out there is capable of killing like this, and by proxy or implication, you're capable of killing like this, and that's pretty horrifying and frightening. So,
Max?
I think it goes back to what Billy said about how it's a personal experience, and I think horror is far and away the most personal cinematic genre that exists. And if you watch Blair Witch Project, whether you like it or not, it all depends on what you see as the witch. And for me, that's one of the most terrifying films I've ever seen, because my imagination allowed me to go crazy with what was out there in the woods. And I think I think serial killer films are definitely some of the most horrific and scary films, because you're talking about putting a very violent weapon inside another being that you most likely don't even know. And I think that's the coldest, darkest place anyone could ever go. And it's that part of the brain that I find so horrific and that I find so fascinating at the same time. It's a real duality, and that's why these films, there's kind of not a responsibility involved, but I love the fact that we talked about the Dahmer film and the Bundy film, and for the most part, we both sort of saw that the Bundy film was kind of a cartoon, and we felt we were watching it versus, well, not Thomas, but the Dahmer film was a little more artful and a little more understated and more
straight-faced
about this experience. It's an experience when you see these films. They're not easy. They challenge you to watch them, and that's what's so exciting about them, even if they suck.
Max, would you consider Mr. Popper's Penguins a horror film or not?
That is the ultimate scary movie. A bunch of digital penguins running around with a billionaire. I'll shit my pants.
God bless America.
That'd help us.
Oh man! All right, guys. Listen, we're gonna.
Well, wait. You didn't answer the question. Your own question. Do you think this is a horror film? Or Billy's question. Sorry. Do you think this is a horror film?
Absolutely, I think it's a horror film. I mean, to watch the whole unsettling experience from, what these real life characters are capable of. I mean, the true horror in it for me is to know that, that this actually happened, and to realize that these poor victims, that what they had gone through. I mean, when you're watching these movies, you can't help but try to, think about what that would be like, and it's a very horrifying thought. So, I mean, quite simply and quite shortly, I do think that these are horror movies.
Okay, so you know what? I don't mean to harp on this, man, but that is horrifying, right? So, how do you feel about the cartoony and caricature that's being painted on the screen in relation to this horror?
I just think that's a style that Bright chooses to bring, that stylistic aspect into the movie. I don't think it makes it less horrifying. Again, like I said, what he does is he allows you to realize that Bundy himself was, thought what he was doing was funny, and he brought a charm into it, and I think that plays in that whole overall theme of the cartoonish nightmare that we're watching.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, one other way to look at it is just as it's undermining it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, again, you could look at it any way you want. The way you find it exploitive, I think that there's style there.
All right, Billy, last one to answer the question. Your own question.
This specific film, I don't consider a horror movie. It's hard for me. I would say most serial killer movies I don't consider to be horror. As I said, it's kind of a categorical prejudice that I have. And to comment on the point of contention between you two guys, I think that the cartoonish over the top serial killer movie to end them all is Natural Born Killers, and it works. I mean, I really like Natural Born Killers, and it says a lot that it's in a lot of ways the same movie as Ted Bundy, but it works for me because they're fictional and because he's definitely Oliver Stone in that movie is definitely making points about modern American culture. People behave like cartoon characters because that's what we imagine ourselves to be in our minds. And Rodney Dangerfield is the abusive father in the sitcom with the laugh track and everything. I think that really works, and I think it allows you in to be a participant in that story because it's fictional. With Ted Bundy, as an audience member, I can't get involved in that because, as Max pointed out, I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, those are real human beings who went through that. I can't have fun with this. I can't get on this roller coaster.
But by the same token, Natural Born Killers, you wouldn't call a horror film, I'm presuming, because it's more of a satire.
And as I said, I generally don't categorize serial killer movies as horror.
Right.
All right, guys. We're going to get to ratings on Ted Bundy. And once again, we're going to start with our very special guest, Mr. Max Cook. Max, what do you have for Ted Bundy tonight?
I give Ted Bundy I'm going to go back again to Billy on Dahmer. I'm going to give it a 1.5.
Ooh, wow. Harsh.
I just was really... If it wasn't for the fact that it was called Ted Bundy and it's supposed to be about Ted Bundy and these beautiful women were being beaten so, grotesquely, and I just felt, even for the actresses in the movie, I know that's probably me tucking my dick between my legs, but for some reason, and maybe it's, I love women, I'm surrounded by them all the time, I just felt really gross after watching this. And like I said, I'd seen it before and I didn't have this reaction at all. But I guess maybe it has to do with, being a fucking old fart now. Like I matured a little bit. It just felt a little gross this time.
Joe, what do you have for me?
Yeah, I still have to give credit for a guy who's they're trying something that's a little bit out of the norm. It's not your typical run-of-the-mill attempt at a serial killer film. I mean, the guy's got a lot of vision, and he's trying to do something that's unique. So I'm not going to go so harshly on it. I'm gonna put it at a 2.5.
Fair enough. Billy, it's up to you. What do you got?
I actually am going to go with 2 stars on this one because I do feel that it was technically very well done. I mean, there's a certain it's kind of not fair, but coming from a filmmaker's perspective, that director is able to do a lot with very little, and there's a degree of skill there that is definite. So just for purely technical reasons, I'd give it 2.
Fair enough. Well, I'm going to tell everyone I am a fan of this movie. I've been a fan of this movie since it came out, and I was very happy to revisit it. And I feel that Bright creates, once again, a cartoonish nightmare version of this sadistic real-life human being. It moves well, and it's very, very surrealistic and odd. And I am going to be bold, and I'm going to give it 4 stars. I really,
Whoa.
I like
That's awesome, though.
I like it. I like it just as much as
Thomas
Dahmer.
likes it, damn it.
I feel that they're both 2 very different, but different takes, but very well put together films. And
Thomas, you need to shoot a gun, man.
I wish
you feel so good.
I wish Matthew Bright would do more work. Where is this guy? Do something.
Yeah,
Bright
Freeway 2 wasn't too long ago, was it?
A while, like maybe 2000-ish.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's been a long time. I mean, this guy hasn't been working on anything. Maybe he's still he's good buddies with Danny Elfman, so he's probably just
that's right,
hanging out with Danny Elfman all the time. Max, you do that, right? Hang out with Danny Elfman.
Oh, Danny and I, forget about it.
I did forget to.
Robin Big, we're awesome.
We did fail to mention that there's has anyone ever seen The Forbidden Zone?
No, but this was he acted in that film, Matthew Bright, with a couple of the guys from Oingo
With
Boingo.
Richard and Danny Elfman when Danny Elfman wasn't the leader of Oingo Boingo yet.
Yeah.
And you can you know what? I know the movie's on Netflix. I've just seen clips from it. It's on the to watch list, but it's pretty hilarious.
Do you guys want to know a true fact?
Yeah.
Did you know that Ted Bundy was the first killer that was deemed a serial killer?
That's what I hear.
That's what I hear too. I think that the term, again, I don't know. I haven't studied it, but from what I read, he was the first. They used that term with him first with Ted Bundy, which is an interesting fact. Definitely, guys. I thank you very much for making this podcast very interesting, and I think that we looked at two pretty interesting movies with some interesting characters, to say the least.